Chamber of Commerce. And we'd like to thank each person for taking the time to come tonight. We're a representative government, and the more we know, the better we are at that. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan. She did mention our co-hosts this evening. So the Tillamook Headlight Herald, the Tillamook County Pioneer, and the Pacific City Woods Chamber of Commerce. So our reach is broad, and we are really pleased about that. So I think that we will jump right into this evening's event. So what's going to happen is each candidate will provide 2 minutes of introductions. This is a time for them to convey to you what they most want you to know about themselves. They have 2 minutes of uninterrupted time. We will then move into questions. They will have 1 minute to respond. That may change if the question requires a more in-depth response. We could go as much as 1:30 or 2 minutes, depending on how the question is phrased and what they're trying to elicit from it. And at the end of that, each candidate will then have 2 minutes to wrap up. For those of you watching, you will see me. Depending on what we're flashing, there will be a 1 minute, a 30-second, and a 10-second. At that point, after the 10-second mark, I will ask the candidate to wrap up if they haven't already, and we'll move on to the next question. Again, please keep your video off unless you are one of the candidates speaking. And then for the candidates, I believe everyone was here, but just in case, for the candidates, it might be helpful if you pin me so that I am the person that you see primarily, and I think that'll make it easier for you to see these signs and also catch potentially any visual cues that you really need to wrap it up now. We try to keep this light. I will tell you that the races and the times have generated some pretty strong questions. And so I appreciate any time that you take in your thought process to think them through. This is definitely a opportunity for you to talk about a lot of things. We're going to cover a lot of ground this evening. So just answer as best you can and as honestly as you can. And that's the best that you can do. So good luck to all of the candidates this evening. I have a question here in the chat. Let's see where this goes under Senate and House. So we are going to start with the Senate race. So I will make sure that our candidates are unmuted. We have Representative Suzanne Weber and Melissa Bush are our candidates this evening that are with us. This is for Senate District 16. And Representative Weber, if you wouldn't mind, I'll let you kick off with your initial introductions.
Thank you. It's so nice to be invited back to this. It's a unique opportunity to be able to connect with people. My name is Suzanne Weber. I am currently the representative for House District 32, and I'm seeking the Senate seat in District 16, previously held by Senator Johnson. It's an honor to serve the people of Western Oregon. I'm a 50+ year resident of Tillamook. 30 of those years were spent in the classroom just a half a block from my home, teaching first, second, third, and a special class. I have 5 children in a blended family and 7 grands, and I lost my husband to pancreatic cancer 6 years ago. After retiring from the classroom, my sister-in-law and I owned and operated 2 small businesses. I understand the plight of small business. I have a real belief in the importance of service to my community. I was a city councilor for 8 years and the mayor of Tillamook for 10 years. Education has always been a priority of mine, and I will continue to fight for funding for teachers and students. We in rural Oregon are afflicted by the same problems as much of the state, but we see that we seem to be the last recognized and funded. Housing, infrastructure, and government overreach are also problems that need addressing. Forestry, farming, and fishing are the backbone of our economy, and they need to be protected. The problems surrounding these challenges require common sense, and I feel that I have the ability to accomplish those goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Melissa Bush.
Thank you, everyone. Happy to be here with you all this evening. My name is Melissa Bush. I'm running for State Senate District 16. I am a nurse and a mother. I live in Warren, which is on the Columbia County side of our district. And I am, again, just honored to be here. In this time of great change in our district, I am bringing professional experience, ability for complex problem solving. And while I may not be a career politician, I do have a proven record of courage in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. When I was 15, living in my Midwestern hometown, I found myself in a local public health clinic where a nurse told me that I was pregnant. I spent the many months that followed preparing to become a young mom, but ultimately I found I wasn't able to be the parent that I wanted to be at that time. And so instead, I planned an open adoption for my daughter and became a birth mother instead. As a teenager making pregnancy and parenting decisions, I was introduced to the ways in which public policies impact our personal lives. Now, 25 years later, I have come to understand that connection even more deeply. I am a mother of a beautiful blended family. I am a nurse, and I know how challenging these things are for our communities. My nursing practice takes me into people's homes here in Senate District 16 and into their very private lives. Before and throughout the pandemic, I have shown up for our community in their most vulnerable moments. And every day I see the impact of policies and systems that are not working for our communities, for our families, our children, our elderly and disabled. I know what makes us sick. It's not just bacteria and viruses. It's unstable housing and food insecurity. It's stagnant economic opportunities and the daily struggles that create deep divisions and leave folks in our district feeling left behind without real choices. I'm ready to stand up and advocate in Salem for the critical needs of our diverse and expansive district, and I'm ready to get this work done together to move our communities forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, now comes the part everyone's been waiting for. I was hoping to find a softball question, and there aren't a lot of them, to be clear. We're just going to jump into it, folks. Okay, so do you support and will you work as a legislator to change Oregon's redistricting process to be led as a citizen committee? And let me get this ready. And we will start with you, Ms. Bush.
Could you repeat the question for me?
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure
Yep.
I got the extent of it.
Yep. Let me stop your time. Do you support and will you work as a legislator to change Oregon's redistricting process to be led by a citizen committee?
Thank you for the question. I would say I don't support it entirely being led by a citizen committee. I think the legislature has a role in this process. Our last redistricting process, while I know created a lot of change and change is hard, did involve a lot of citizen input, and there was many open hearings for community members to weigh in and to make their concerns and needs known. I think that it is important, incredibly important, that citizens are involved in that process. But I don't know that I agree that it should be completely citizen-led. I think that there is a process for our legislators, or a role for our legislators in that process as well.
Okay. Do you need me to restate the question, Representative Weber? Okay.
No. I sponsored a bill with other legislators to, in fact, bring that to the forefront. Because what we found when this redistricting process was happening was that it accentuated the political divide, and it pitted people against each other, and it tried to destroy some people's districts and some people's areas, and it tried to take people out of their own areas. And if you have a citizen committee that is dedicated to doing this, you also have citizen input that can play into it. But it takes the political rhetoric and the arguing out of the whole situation. I completely support a commission that is separate to be able to accomplish this.
Next, do you support and will you work as a legislator to change Oregon's primary election to a fully open primary where all voters can vote for any candidate of any party or no party in partisan elections?
Me?
Yeah, I just had to make sure that question made sense as I read it. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I think it did. Okay.
There was a big move to make this actually happen. And the reason is because we have so many non-affiliated voters right now in the state. We have more non-affiliated voters in some places than we do have people that are connected with a political party. And the primary is dedicated to your affiliation in a political party. And so making this a fully open primary would enable the people who are the NAVs, the non-affiliated voters, also have a vote in who goes forward to the election in the fall. And there are a lot of pros and cons to it. I've thought about it a lot, and I think that I could support that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bush.
Thank you. I believe that our elections should be open and available to every single voter in the state. That said, I think that while I personally might be registered to a particular party, I do support the idea of making sure that folks can vote in the primary and in the general, regardless of their party affiliation. I think that's particularly important and valuable in a district like ours that does have a pretty even split between registered Republicans, registered Democrats, and folks that fall into either an other category or a non-affiliated or independent. So in general, I think that's a conversation that's certainly worth having, and I would love to be at the table for that.
Great, thank you. Next, these are a series of yes or no questions. Should you take more time, just know that the person asking was only interested in yes or no responses. So the first one, and we'll start with Ms. Bush, is do you support critical race theory?
I don't think that's a yes or no question. I support honest education that is based in history and science.
Okay. Representative Weber.
I have to say that I support teaching facts with no tinge of political ideology, and I believe that parents should be involved in their children's education as much as possible.
Okay. Do you support PERS for the viewing public, the Public Employees Retirement System?
Yes.
I am a member of PERS. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Representative.
I'm a member of PERS and I support PERS.
Okay. Ms. Bush?
Yes.
Okay, we'll start with Ms. Bush. Do you support the Second Amendment?
Yes.
Representative Weber?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then, and a twist, do you support tolls on roads? Representative Weber.
That depends on which road it is. Because I see the value of a toll on a road that needs additional construction work and the funds are not available. However, I do not support tolls just for toll's sake.
Okay. Ms. Bush.
I would echo what Representative Weber said. I think that it's a conversation to be had. I think that our infrastructure is abysmal and needs investment. And I think that we need to be looking at solutions to really invest in significant ways, both from the state and potentially with the support of tolling if needed. I think it's a conversation to be had. I don't think it's a simple yes or no.
Now in a very different direction. Okay, women have had to work hard to become fully participating citizens in America. Nationally, choice is fully under attack with Roe versus Wade, and many folks will look to states like Oregon for leadership on reproductive rights. What is your position on protecting our right to choose, and how will you protect our reproductive freedom? So I'll start with you, Ms. Bush.
Thank you. This is a question that's near and dear to my heart. As I shared with you all at the beginning of my opening statements, I myself am someone who had to grapple with just the decision-making around reproductive choice. And that experience in my own life only further solidifies my belief and understanding that these are decisions that need to be made by women and their healthcare provider and their family and their God if they choose to worship. That said, I think that our state is going to be looked at heavily as changes happen nationally. I am committed to investing in our communities to make sure that we have access to all aspects of healthcare, including reproductive healthcare, both for our own community, and our rural communities do have a very limited access to reproductive care, as well as people coming from other areas of the country that will be seeking safe harbor here. So I'm deeply committed to reproductive choice and reproductive healthcare as an aspect of all healthcare.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Weber.
Last night I was asked the same question, and I think I made a mistake because I was really listening to the other presenters, but I have to say I am pro-life from conception to natural death, and I support reproductive care. And that's my answer.
Okay, thank you.
I did say I am pro-life, and I want to make sure that that's clear.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, next we'll start with you, Representative Weber. How will you support equity in schools?
Equity in schools. You know, when I was in the classroom, that was never a discussion, never a problem, because everybody came through that door, whether they had dirty socks on or messy hair, or they were a different color, as being a special person that was worthy of being educated and appreciated. And I think that that is what we have to move forward with. I know that we have difficult things happening in schools right now, but I think that what we need to get back to is the value of the individual person.
Thank you. Ms. Bush?
I'm honored to be endorsed by the Oregon Education Association. I believe deeply in the value of teachers, and I believe deeply in the value of our students. I think that we achieve equity by fully funding our schools. and making sure that our schools have the community resources that they need to do the work that is so critical. We have many underserved community members, including students in our district. And I think it's essential that those students don't get left behind. And oftentimes teachers are on the front line of making sure that that happens. And so I think that it is really critical that we are really putting our money where our mouth is on this issue, and that we're showing that we value our teachers by investing in our schools, and so that we can create equitable scenarios for all of our students, all of the teachers and the educators involved. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question. It is critical that at both the local and state levels, those that represent us adhere to the highest ethical and legal standards. After all, you will serve us and will be a model for our children. The question for the candidates is two parts. Have you ever been convicted of a crime? And have you ever been subject to an investigation for any ethics violations? And so we'll start with Ms. Bush.
No and no.
Okay, Representative Weber?
The same, no and no. And you know, we do have to file an ethics form every April 15th to disclose anything that could potentially be a problem, especially surrounding money and things like that. But you know, I think that in our position, we need to absolutely be held to a higher standard and be above all of that.
Thank you. This next question, the asker asked that it be read to all of the candidates, but this is a local measure. So I'm going to read it because I was asked. You may or may not have a measured response for this, but are you for or against measure 29-161, which is the Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance, and why? And I'll start with you, Representative Weber, if this is something you're familiar with.
Sure. You know, in the beginning, I wasn't familiar with this, but I have become very familiar with this. I am a supporter of the Second Amendment, and I'm a gun owner, and I'll always defend the Second Amendment. I think my main concern around this ordinance is the lawsuit potential that could be thrown at our county from the state. And I am a very huge supporter of our law enforcement officers, and I am hoping to hear from them on their opinion of this proposal. And how will I vote on this? I have not as yet decided what my personal vote will be.
Okay. And Ms. Bush, I don't know if this is a measure you're familiar with, but if you'd like to take a crack at it, that'd be great.
Absolutely. I am familiar with the measure. It's something I've been hearing a lot about from the constituents in Tillamook County. I have shared in previous answer to this question that a similar measure was put before voters in Columbia County in the last election cycle, and it passed. And what I have seen come out of that was litigation. There has been significant lawsuits, and that cost the county a lot of money. I am concerned about that. And in addition to that concern, I am a public health nurse. I work in our communities. I care deeply about the health of our communities, and I am someone who believes in the Second Amendment. I think that both of these things are able to be held at the same time. I don't think that we have to do one or the other. So that said, I am concerned that this particular measure is not going to accomplish anything that it's maybe intended to do. And I do think it's potential to cost the county a tremendous amount of money. And that said, if I was able to vote on it, which I am not because I am not a Tillamook County resident, I am a Columbia County resident, I would vote no, just as I did when I voted on the Columbia County side. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we'll start with you, Ms. Bush. What are your thoughts on the private forest accord, and do you think that it will benefit the state?
My thoughts on the private forest accord is that I think it was a very good effort at bringing multiple stakeholders to the table and having very challenging and difficult conversations, which is something that I believe deeply in. I hear from both the timber industry, fishing industries, and conservation groups about various concerns about current practices, about restrictions, about legislation, about lack of from some people's perspectives. So I've heard many different viewpoints, but at the end of the day, I think that if we are going to solve complex problems, we are going to need to bring different folks to the table to have these conversations and try to reach compromise, because we can't all get what we want all of the time. Including myself. So that said, I think that the private forest accord was a step in the right direction in terms of having those open dialogues, finding ways to negotiate and compromise to try to reach the benefit for everyone in the community.
Thank you. Representative Weber.
Thank you. I will tell you that I don't think the forest accord went far enough. And as a result, when I was voting on it, I voted no, because I felt that there were working people and small forest issues that were not completely satisfactorily addressed. I think that it does well for big timber companies, but I think that we need to also consider the people who have the small woodlots and the small tree farms in that same consideration.
Okay. So now you get the softball at the end, because that is the end of our questions. I guess I'll qualify that. Are there any other questions that folks would like for our two state Senate candidates? I'll give you about 1 minute I'll give you 2 minutes, because that's going to be how long it's going to take for them to answer this, what is presumably the last question. And that is, what are your top 3 priorities, if elected, going into the next legislative session? And we'll start with you, Representative Weber.
Thank you. I have been working on some issues that are very near and dear to me, because they have been brought to me by my constituents, and one of them is tax reform, and looking at our tax forms and how we report our taxes. And I think that that is something that we need to continue to work on, because I feel that Oregon does not have a revenue problem, they have a spending problem. And so I think that it could possibly be resolved by taking care of some of the tax onus that we have. The other issues that I will work diligently on are the ones that I have committee assignments on, and they are education, housing, health, and early childhood.
Thank you. Same question for you, Ms. Bush.
Thank you. Healthcare is my #1 priority as a nurse. And so I think that it's critical that we are working towards ensuring that every Oregonian has access to quality, comprehensive healthcare in this state, and that no one should be left out of that. That said, I have certainly come to understand in the work that I do that healthcare means that we are also ensuring access to all of the essential needs that people have to be healthy and thriving community members. That includes housing, that includes childcare and elder care, that includes quality education, that includes making sure that we have good, stable, well-paying jobs. That includes really all of the things that make sure that we all are able to participate in our community and our economy. So again, healthcare, but I see that as an umbrella that includes so many other critical things for our communities.
Great. Well, it turns out when you tell people they're not going to have a chance to ask any more questions, they start asking questions. Okay, so then we'll start with you, Ms. Bush. Wow, I'm sorry you only have a minute for this one because honestly, I can't give you enough time to answer this particular question. So try to put it in succinctly as possible. How do you plan to address the affordable housing crisis? And we'll start with you, Ms. Bush.
Absolutely. This is a critical issue for our district, particularly the north coastal side of the district. However, it's certainly impacting all of Senate District 16. I think that we need to be looking at really innovative solutions. This is a very complex problem and it needs a multifaceted solution. That said, I think that we need to be looking at housing at every single level. So everything from housing people that are unhoused currently with increased shelter capacity to creating a tremendous amount more of workforce housing for people who are gainfully employed but do not have access to housing that is affordable, up to folks that are maybe even middle to upper income that are priced out of our market. So I think that we're going to need to look at this from every level of government, from the federal to the state to the counties to the cities, to be collaborating and looking at public-private partnerships. These are all things I've been working hard on the campaign trail, and I look forward to doing more of that work. Thank you.
Representative Weber.
I've thought a lot about this and my answer for this. And I say that the crisis on our streets is actually two crises. We have a lack of homes for sale and for rent. And it comes from 50 years of land use laws and permissive, massive permitting delays. And the second crisis that I see that is affecting all this is on the streets of Portland. And that it's now spilling over into our communities here in rural Oregon. And I think that we have issues with severe mental illness and substance abuse. And I think that that is all playing into our homeless and houseless conditions. Also, I think if we need to fix housing and homelessness, we need to have an array of solutions that are based on common sense and not political ideology.
Okay. Let's see here. All right, we have 3 more questions before we move on to the next candidates. So I have to admit, I'm actually not familiar with this, so I'll be curious to learn this. Representative Weber, do you support ranked choice voting, also known as ranked force, also known as instant runoff voting?
Let me tell you what I think.
Okay.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay. Nor do I. I'm sorry I can't explain it to you. It makes me.
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
Okay.
I've never had that question. I don't understand it.
Okay. And I apologize that I can't help with that.
Okay.
Ms. Bush?
I am familiar with ranked choice voting. I think if I was going to boil it down to my understanding, would be that people are allowed, rather than voting for one candidate, that they're able to rank their choices. So say this is my first choice, but if that candidate doesn't get the majority of votes, then this would be my second choice, and so on and so forth. I'm interested in the conversation. I don't have a really strong opinion on it because it's not something that I have learned enough about to really form a strong opinion, but I am always for any measures to engage voters. I think that it's critical that people participate in the civic process. I think it's critical that people vote. And I know a lot of people feel really frustrated by the current systems, two-party systems, by feeling like their votes don't matter. And so I think if there's ways to invigorate our communities to vote, then I'm definitely down to have that conversation and see what we can do.
Okay, well, thank you for, once you said that, I went, oh, okay.
Agree.
Let's see here. So, okay, we're gonna shut down the chats. I've got all the questions that we can ask right now in the time that we have. So let's see. How do you feel about the issues that law enforcement are running to in the state of Oregon as a whole, not being able to hold criminals accountable for their crimes due to lenient laws and pandemic restrictions? And we'll start with Ms. Bush.
Thank you. I mean, I've talked to a lot of folks in our law enforcement community that are feeling really frustrated with legislative changes that have happened, and certainly have heard a diverse array of opinions from people in the community. So this is something that I think that we need to continue to have conversations about. That said, I know that in Tillamook County, I heard from our sheriff that some of the pandemic restrictions were things that they felt very good about, that they had felt confident about the fact that they were able to keep no COVID cases in the jails, and that was something that they were proud of. And so I'm not going to judge those restrictions if they were things that our law enforcement felt confident about. In terms of legislation, I think that there are reasons that some of the legislation that has come before our legislature has been there. And I know they're hard conversations. I'm up for that. I'm up for hard conversations. And I'm also up to hear how it impacts our communities and law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Weber.
One of the issues that we had come before us in the legislature was the ability of a law enforcement officer to be able to stop someone if they had a headlight out or a tail light out. And the majority party felt that that was no longer necessary. You would not have believed how many law enforcement people I heard from that said that by not being able to enforce that any longer, we are creating an issue that is safety related. If someone doesn't have a headlight or doesn't have a tail light and it's dark, and there are all kinds of unintended consequences that can occur. And the sheriffs told me that most of the time when this happens, they give complimentary tickets for people to get repairs, especially if they are having financial difficulties in repairing their vehicle. And so there are a lot of issues that have come before our legislature that I think are, impacting our law enforcement.
Oh no, I was just yeah.
Oh, I thought maybe I was getting the sign.
Well, it was a little bit of that, but I also had a coincidental edge. Thank you very much for that. So we have two more questions. And so we'll start with you, Representative Weber. Do you support national popular vote, also known as electoral state pact, the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact?
The National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. Okay, so that must mean the Electoral College.
Yep.
I do think that when our forefathers wrote this into our laws, that they had good reasons to do that. I see that there has been a lot of debate on it, and I have not come to any kind of a decision on that, because once again, that is something that will be decided on the federal level. And I, as a state legislator, will most likely not be having a decision on that. There have been times in the last few years that I thought it would be a good idea if we didn't have the Electoral College. And then there are times that I see the intrinsic value of our forefathers' forethought in putting that into practice.
And, you know, I'm going to veer a little off script here. The person that wrote that question, it was in the chat. The person that wrote that question did want to clarify that it is being decided at the state levels. So apparently this is going to be an issue that's going to come in front of you as in your position if you're elected.
Well, then I will listen to everything that is presented, and I will make an informed decision by talking to my constituents about what their feelings are.
Thank you. Ms. Bush.
Hi. I am still learning more about this. My understanding is that Oregon has already supported national popular vote. And so I am not sure at this point what more would come before me if, when elected. But I am certainly happy to continue that conversation and learn more.
Okay, and your final question. There is way too much division right now in our society. If you are elected to serve as senator, what strategies will you use to achieve bipartisan cooperation? So I'll start with you, Ms. Bush.
Thank you. You might have chosen a line out of my closing statement, but that said, this is what I do every day as a nurse. I serve folks from every background and every political affiliation. And I have to have hard conversations sometimes about how we're going to accomplish mutual goals. And I think that my work trains me very well to do that. That said, I know that we're living in contentious times and that there is a lot of division. And I think that it takes a person with compassion and care and willingness to really listen and learn to be able to bridge some of those divides. And that's exactly what I do every day. And that is what I'm prepared to do in Salem.
Thank you. That concludes our questions. So now we'll move into your final thoughts.
I don't think that Suzanne
Did you
got
want me-
the
No,
answer.
I certainly do. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Absolutely. Would you like me to repeat the question so you get the full suite of what was said? I
Sure.
will do that. I'm so sorry. Oh dear. Yes, I definitely want you to answer the question. There is way too much division right now in our society. If you are elected to serve as senator, what strategies will you use to achieve bipartisan cooperation?
I will use the same strategies that I've been using all along. And that is, I work for who I am representing. For years, I was on COPAC and Northwest Act and the mayor and city councilor, and nobody knew what political party I was, because what was most important was what we did was the best for the people we represented. And people were surprised when they discovered that my political affiliation, because my political affiliation never came into the decision-making. It was always what was best for the people. The consequences, the unintended consequences were always taken into consideration for reasons other than political parties. And that's what I'll continue to do. I have made some very good friends on the other side of the aisle. I have worked to propose bills with people on the other side of the aisle that we got passed. And it was a very pleasurable experience to be able to work across the aisle and know that what we were doing was best for the kids and for the state of Oregon.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to move into our final 2 minutes. This is an opportunity for you to touch on responses to questions that maybe you'd hoped would be asked, or to clarify, or to simply let folks hear one more time why you are the best person for the job. So you will have 2 minutes, and we will start with, well, I think we started with Representative Weber in the introduction. So we'll start with Ms. Bush and end with Representative Weber. So Ms. Bush.
Thank you. As I've traveled our district as a nurse and as a candidate for Senate District 16, I see folks from all walks of life. I have driven up many a driveway to houses with flags flying, pledging allegiance to a wide range of political and social interests. And yet I walk in, I sit down at the kitchen table, and I care for each of those patients and their families in the same way, no matter their viewpoints or their politics. I show up. I listen to our community members. I share their concerns, and I genuinely want to find solutions to the problems that they face. There are many members of our communities across this district who are experiencing legitimate struggles. Each and every one of those people would be my constituents. I am a nurse. I am an expert in collaboration. I am an expert in caring. I am an expert in solving critical problems that can mean life or death. When elected, that is what I will bring to the table. You can count on me to listen, to learn, to advocate, and to work as part of the team that we are. That's what I do every day as a nurse, and it's what I'll keep doing as a senator of Senate District 16. I am in this race for all of you, so we can create the communities that we want to live in now and the future we want for our children and our grandchildren. But I can't do it alone. I hope you will join me, and together, let's move forward. Let's move forward for your families and for our community. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Representative Weber.
I'm in an unusual situation here because the sun is shining and it's shining in the window. And it's just such a sign of brightness, and it's so welcome. And so that's why I'm moving around here, and I apologize for that. You know, we in rural Oregon are afflicted by the same problems that much of the state are also afflicted with. And we seem to be the last recognized and sometimes the last funded. And it is my mission to make sure that we have attention that is focused on our area, to make sure that our area are thriving. Our people in our area are thriving, not merely surviving. We need to continue the common sense effort that we have begun to support our rural Northwest priorities. I feel now that it's ever more important that we have an advocate who has her longtime home here and knows the needs and continues to serve the people. And I feel that I am that common sense person who has those qualifications to get that accomplished. And it is my hope that I can count on you for your vote in November. And I want to thank you again for the opportunity to come and visit with you all. And if you ever have a question besides this, give me a call. I'd be happy to converse with you on any of the subjects that we may not have covered this evening, but are important to you. Thank you.
Thank you both very much for being here this evening. That was great. And I'm glad that we had more questions roll in, because this is sometimes the only opportunity people get to speak get to speak to you. So I'm really glad that we got a very good variety of questions, and I learned something this evening. With that, we will now move on to the state representative race for District 32. 32, yeah. I just need to ask, is Glenn here? If you are, please raise your hand or turn on your picture. Okay. Okay, well, it looks like he may not be here, so we will begin. If he happens to show up, we'll certainly let him join into the conversation. The first 2 minutes are yours to introduce yourselves, and then we'll move into the questions. So we'll begin with Logan, Mr. Lady.
Thank you. My name is Logan Laity, a small business owner from Tillamook and community advocate in this county, supporting our working families and first responders. I have a track record of diving in and doing the work for our community. And we are in the midst of a housing crisis. Folks are leaving our communities to find education and jobs elsewhere, and many in our community cannot afford healthcare. I understand the hardship of trying to find a home on the coast, both rentals and own, and I still cannot find a home of my own. We are losing teachers and nurses and essential workers because of this. And I volunteered to organize and protect the Oregon Health Plan. As president of my student union, I advocated in our capital for education reform. In my first year on the coast, I took my hardships and fought for a ballot measure that would fund workforce housing. I serve as director on an economic renewal agency. There, we use taxpayer funds to invest in our small businesses and our community. This is the role of a legislator. In Salem, I will work to fund child and elder care, fight to protect the Oregon Health Plan, expand the Student Success Act to invest in career and technical education, and work on housing ordinance reform to start building homes that we can afford. I'm Logan Laity, and I am the sole candidate for this office with years of experience fighting for these issues, locally and in Salem. Thank you for your vote to keep the North Coast our home.
Cyrus, could you please tell me how to pronounce your last name?
Yeah, sure. Javity like cavity.
That's exactly what I would have said, so I'm glad I was right. Okay, so if you are ready, your 2 minutes begins.
Ready. My name's Cyrus Javity, running for state representative in our district. That's Tillamook and Clatsop County, as well as Clatskanie. I lived in the district now for 10 years. We moved here 2012. I'm a dentist, have a practice here just in Tillamook, Sand Creek Dental. I have 5 kids, all mostly raised here now. 2 of them still at home, 3 away at college, costing me an arm and a leg. And I'm running for office because I believe that we have some big problems to solve in our district. We've got housing issues, we have workforce issues, we have an attack on our natural resources. And I think these are problems we can solve regardless of politics, political parties, if we work together. And so what I want to do is represent the people in our community, hear their stories, ask them their opinions and what their solutions are, and then go to Salem and see if we can start fixing these issues that we have and make some progress, make a better tomorrow for our families and for our neighbors, for our parents, our seniors, and everyone has an interest in making this community stay and be great. That's it.
Thank you. We do have someone on the phone. I'm just going to make sure that's not Glenn and he hasn't been able to do anything. Let's see. And okay. Oh boy. Okay. Well, we're going to hope that that he shows up at some point. So now we will move into the questions. Thank you very much for your opening remarks. Many of the questions that were asked of the state Senate race candidates are similar to what you will hear Many folks asked that the questions be provided to both candidates, Senate and House. So we will start with the first question, which is around the redistricting. Do you support and will you work as a legislator to change Oregon's redistricting process to be led by a citizen committee? And I guess we can start with Mr. Javity.
Sure, I think it's a good idea. Why not look at it? I'm not sure what all the details are and what that would look like, but it is kind of frustrating to watch politicians, especially when you've got a supermajority, lock things down and kind of decide how it's going to be without any input from the citizens that are going to be affected. So yeah, I'd be all for it as long as we can come up with a good solution.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lady.
Thank you. I do support this concept, but not how we've seen it on the ballot. In my political science education, I have seen this happen in very many different states, and we compare different approaches. The one that we saw most recently on the ballot would not have been fair, not just to either party, but also to the unaffiliated voters. I do support a system that brings in a nonpartisan perspective and brings in a legislative perspective, because it's not just partisan ideology we're thinking about, it's also weird things like, how does a border shift, or what community do we feel like we're a part of? In our own district, there's now a town part of us called Clatskanie, and it kind of straddles the line between the North Coast and what we think of as Columbia County, Oregon. And that is an area that would not have been, that was an area that culturally better fits with us, but probably would never have been added if we didn't have a legislative sense. So I support a hybrid approach, but I definitely want to see more citizen engagement. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, do you support and will you work as a legislator to change Oregon's primary election to a fully open primary where all voters can vote for any candidate of any party or no party in partisan elections? We'll start with Mr. Lady.
Thank you. Oregon is one of the few states that holds closed primaries. As it currently stands, the major parties get to choose if they want their primaries to be partisan or not. Personally, I believe that we need to open up with one exception. I think if you're going to vote in a partisan primary, you should also update your voter registration automatically. I think that we should make it as easy as possible for people to vote in whatever races they want to. Pick one primary, and then once you get your ballot, your registration is automatically updated. That's where I stand on that, and I'll be happy to vote for open primaries if we're presented the opportunity. Again, right now, state law mandates that the state parties themselves decide if they're open or closed. But if that issue comes up, you know where I stand. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Javity.
Good question. I don't know. I think the way it's set up now, we're really trying to elect a Democrat or nominate a Democrat and a Republican and someone who's unaffiliated to represent those political parties. And then have a general election in November where everyone votes. So as it is now, I think it's frustrating for some people who want to participate in that process and they don't necessarily want to be part of a certain party. And so I could see going that way. But on the other hand, I see it as a mechanism for the parties to decide who's going to represent them. So I'm on the fence. I want to see some details and decide kind of what that's going to look like, hear the pros and the cons, but I'm undecided.
Great, thank you. The next is a grouping of yes or no, at least that's what the questioner was hoping for, but you can use your minute as you see fit. So yes or no, do you support critical race theory? We'll start with you, Mr. Javity.
No.
Okay, Mr. Lady.
I support trauma-informed education in our schools. I don't support critical race theory as a legal concept in K-12 education. All education needs to be age appropriate, but I also understand that that gets confused sometimes with, basic considerations. Like if a child is coming in poverty-stricken and hasn't had something to eat, we need to empower our teachers to understand that they might need a little more assistance. It's really important that when we're in the state legislature, we're not talking about these partisan trigger words. We're talking about actual people's lives and what we can do about it to improve everyone's access to healthcare and education.
Okay. Yes or no, do you support PERS? Mr. Lady?
Heck yeah. I am ashamed about how our prior representation chose to reform PERS without really talking to the beneficiaries in a meaningful way. You know, this is a promise we make out to our public servants who are generally speaking underpaid. And this is the one incentive that we give people, aside from a feeling of serving our community, that's tangible and incentivizes great people to join the public service and serve all of us. I support PERS, and I want to find a way that the next time it's up on the chopping block, we include actual beneficiaries in the discussion. Thank you.
Mr. Javity?
Yes, I support PERS.
Okay. Yes or no, do you support the Second Amendment? Mr. Javity?
Yes, I support the Second Amendment and I'm a gun owner.
Thank you. Mr. Lady?
Yeah, I'm a lifelong gun owner. I support the Second Amendment.
Okay. And then the final yes or no. Do you support tolls on roads? Mr. Lady?
Absolutely not. I think there might be an approach for it on a private road that doesn't serve a public capacity, but no. Public roads are one of the many things that the only way we can ensure that everyone at all income levels can get the job and healthcare they need on time, every time. No tolls.
Okay. Mr. Javity?
Mostly no. I think if we had a solution like I've seen in other states where carpool lanes had a toll option where you could use the carpool lane if you paid a toll, that'd be a neat solution to encourage less traffic on the road as well. But in general, no, I don't support tolls.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we'll move into a very different sentiment. So it is critical that at both the local and state levels, those that represent us adhere to the highest ethical and legal standards. After all, you will serve us and will be a model for our children. The question for the candidates is two parts. The first is, have you ever been convicted or otherwise adjudicated for a crime? And have you been subject to official investigation for any ethics violations? We'll start with you, Mr. Javity.
Cavity like cavity. No,
Yep.
I've never been arrested, convicted, or adjudicated. And I've never been the subject of an investigation for an ethical issue.
Great, thank you. Mr. Lady?
Absolutely not. The only time I was even pulled over for something related to this was I was unfortunately going a little too fast, getting adjusted to our new rules here. And I have never been subject to any ethics violations. In fact, with my experience on the coast and my advocacy in the past, I serve on a board that requires us to submit information to the state for review. I'll go a step further and say that when I'm a legislator, we have to disclose if any bills we're supporting or voting against has a conflict of interest. I will go a step further than all of my peers and review every bill that I'm voting on and see, does this even come close to approaching my personal assets, which I don't have a lot of, but you'll know.
Thank you. So this question again is very Tillamook centric, but folks wanted to hear what the thoughts were on it. Are you for or against Measure 29-161, the Second Amendment Sanctuary Ordinance, and why? And we'll start with you, Mr. Lady.
Thank you. I am a gun owner and firmly support our Second Amendment rights. Personally, I don't think this measure does that, and I won't be voting for it because my reading of it is that law enforcement and the district attorney will not be able to enforce the law of even potential felons. I also know that this not just might, it will cost our cash-strapped county a lot of money. And I do not want us to pay more taxes that only go to legal fees, right?
Thank you.
Doesn't, yeah, thank you.
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Javity.
Yeah, again, Second Amendment supporter. So I'm, if this is what the people want on the ballot, I think we go for it. As far as how I'm going to personally vote on it, I don't know. I haven't decided yet. I see some conflict there between what could potentially happen if the state has, more strict gun laws and and we don't want to enforce them, what kind of litigation or issues is that going to cause for our county and our law enforcement? So, I mean, I don't want to put us in a bad position, but I also feel like the state may be passing some gun laws, or is passing some laws and restrictions on our Second Amendment rights that a lot of people in our county don't like. And if on a local level, we want to push back against that and say, no, I think why not? Let's see what happens. So still the jury's out for me, but I'm looking into it.
Okay, thank you. All right. The next question is, women have had to work hard to become fully participating citizens in America. Nationally, choice is fully under attack with Roe versus Wade, and many folks will look to states like Oregon for leadership on reproductive rights. What is your position on protecting our right to choose, and how will you protect our reproductive freedom? Mr. Javity.
All right, pro-life, just like Suzanne Weber said, from conception till natural death. And I support the efforts to do that correctly, and yeah, pro-life.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lady.
Thank you. I have a friend who used to live in another state, and she, during her birth with her and her husband, she had medical complications. And during this process, she had what was bleeding in the womb. And they went to the hospital, the nearest hospital, and they basically told her it's the baby or the mom in this case. And the doctor informed them, because it's a hospital policy, that decision's already been made for you. They immediately rushed her to the nearest public hospital, where they were able to make the decision themselves between the two of them, their God, and their healthcare provider. At the end of the day, it was the parents who decided this with medical advice. Here in Oregon, we are refuge for all sorts of people, for all sorts of things. And I firmly believe that this is a very personal healthcare decision. It's not for us in the legislature to decide. So I will protect the rights of our families. I am pro-choice, as secured in the US and Oregon constitutions.
Thank you. So Mr. Lady, how will you support equity in schools?
Oh, I love this question. Thank you so much. So one of the things that we have done very well, except for maybe in the last few years here in Tillamook, it's especially in the school district, is what's called trauma-informed education. And what this means is we look at, what is the poverty level of a child when they're coming into the school? What can we do with them for services? But also, are they distracted during class? We know this as teachers and as parents, and they can say, when we're helping everyone with homework, the teachers know to go by their desk and help them and give them a little bit more assistance. Here, as going through community colleges, I advocated for our schools. I went to the Salem and advocated for the Student Success Act. And what we did was we reduced class sizes, because if we can improve funding, we can reduce barriers to quality education. I also support public schools, because they are the only system where qualified teachers with licenses have to teach every single person, no matter their disability, no matter their income, no matter their class or creed. It's so heavily regulated that everyone is welcome. And that is why I love public schools. That's why I love going to Neocani and Tillamook Bay Community College and University now, is everyone is welcome. And I'm so happy to have taken a part in that.
Thank you. Mr. Javity.
I think our children, whatever age they are, deserve equal access to education. So as long as there's no barriers to them getting that, that's what I'm for. I don't think that one group of children based on any type of characteristics should be denied something that another group gets. So I think we're doing a pretty good job of that here in our district. So I'd like to see that continue and make sure that we don't get in the way of that with some bad policies.
Thank you. As I mentioned to the state Senate race, this is a question that could give an hour's worth of response to, but you have a minute. I apologize. But how do you plan to address the affordable housing crisis? And we'll start with you, Mr. Javity.
I think we got to start with those land use laws. I think they've been on the books since 1977. I think they maybe had some good intentions way back when, but 50 years in, we can see some of the effects we didn't plan on, which are home prices that are out of the reach of almost every, well, not every, but of most Oregonians. And it's creating some real problems for us in the getting people to work and jobs, teachers in our counties, healthcare workers, service industry. So unless we fix that, I think we're going to continue to face this problem. We're going to see a lot of frustration, people leaving the district as well to try to find housing and wages somewhere else. So we've got plenty of land right around us that's not farm and forestry land. So one idea I've had is let's take some of these rural residential lots that are 2, 5, 7, 10 acre lots that people aren't going to develop, already have roads and utilities going up right next to them, and let's get back down to the local level and start and ask people if they want to split them up and turn them into half acre and 1 acre lots and create some usable land for building.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lady?
Thank you, Lisa. Housing is very important to me in particular, but also to every group I have advocated for and for our communities. We are losing workers from hospitality to teachers, and our families are being priced out, having to, in the middle of their career, go over into the valley to seek higher wages to match the same housing costs, or older residents who are with their stable income can't afford the rising costs of rent. It is a crisis, and what I would like to see happen is rework zoning laws to allow for multifamily housing, expand down payment assistance, because eventually I think every person should have the ability to own equity in their own home if they choose, because it's an amazing equalizer. And I want to make the zoning more efficient by providing incentives to our local planning departments. And I'll advocate for our local planning commissions with state agencies, because it's not just about what we do top down in Salem, it's about what we do with our community. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have, what are your top 3 priorities if elected? Mr. Lady?
Thank you. I think one of the ones for me, I'll kind of go in first priority, is accessible education. I understand the importance of quality, affordable education, having worked my way through the Tillamook Bay to get a business degree. I saw firsthand how our lack of funding for pre-K prevents young parents from breaking the cycle of poverty, how quality educators leave our community for higher pay, and how, because of our lack of investment, people seeking a career and technical education degree have to leave the district in order to complete it. They find work somewhere else and they can't come back. I'm also going to fight for healthcare, because as a patient coordinator and personally, I saw how patients defer treatment because of insurance gaps and lack of childcare and elder care. I'm also going to support stable housing, because that is our #1 issue here on the coast. And until we fix it, we will not have stable services. Many of us may have to be displaced or leave. And if we do that, we can start to address every other issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Javity?
Yeah, top 3 issues: housing. We need more of it, more affordable housing. 50% of our housing is short-term housing, and we need more long-term housing. So we got to crack that nut first. We need workforce options. So until we get housing, that's going to be tricky, but we need to develop what we have here. So our kids need, and our people who are retraining for new jobs need options at the community college and other, and through other avenues. We need to make that financing available to them, whether it's federal, state, or maybe come up with some inventive or incentive ways to do that on the local level. And lastly, infrastructure. We have got to deal with it, whether it's roads or utilities or internet, you name it. We've got to beef up the infrastructure around here to really support what we're trying to do as we move forward into the future.
Great. We had a question specifically for this position. And it says, I have a 1 and a 2-year-old. Next week, I'm quitting my job because my nanny makes more than I do. What are your ideas for short-term immediate changes in the lack of childcare options on the coast? And we'll start with you, Mr. Javity.
Sure, good question. Just talking about this the other day, the state's making it really difficult for people to become trained child care providers, making it very expensive and out of the reach of people who need it the most. So I think our corporate entities need to step up. I think we, people are employing, like my business, the creamery, and others are. We need workers. We need people who can fulfill these great paying jobs, and so we need access to childcare for their children. And if we can invite, like kinder care out here, put them in a facility like the Kilchi's house that's now vacant, and then businesses like me can agree or commit to pay the tuition for maybe 3, 4, 5 spots or more, and you get a bunch of businesses to do that, then we can hire those people and get those kids in there and then help fund these businesses. And then that creates some space for people who aren't maybe working to also bring their kids there as well for whatever resources. And I think that's where we start. Ask the businesses to start chipping in.
Thank you. Mr. Lady?
Thank you. Recently, very recently, I was scouting the land that we're going to be using for the color run in support of what used to be known as Tillamook Head Start. And that gave me a great opportunity to speak with some people in the industry and ask what's going on, how can we solve this problem? One of the things that we can do, and I think we definitely need to do, is look at how can we support at-home care providers or just nannies and daycare without sacrificing our quality standards. Is there a way that we can make it more affordable for them as a critical component of our labor force? And I am very choosy about who and where gets tax breaks, but I think that in this area is it's such a poor cash flow business that I think we need to provide all the support we can because it's critical to our communities. I saw how parents had to quit their education, and she missed the pre-med exam because her provider moved east to seek cheaper living the day of her pre-med exam. She missed her shift because of this. It's personal, and we got to make it happen, and I will.
Thank you. We have time for one more question, and as the questions kept pouring in, so as always happens, there's more questions than time. The last question is one that was also asked to be directed to both state running candidates. There's way too much division right now in our society. And if you're elected to serve as state rep, what strategies will you use to achieve bipartisan cooperation? And we'll start with you, Mr. Lady.
Thank you. One thing we should know about the state legislature is that unlike Congress, over 70% of bills passed are passed by bipartisan support. And I'm going to use the same strategies I use as a community advocate here in Tillamook for the last 4 years. Community service, it provides us a toolkit to seek common ground. Part of this is nonviolent communication, part of this is persistence, and most importantly, is about asking a lot of questions of people that we stereotypically don't align with. For example, as president of my student union a couple of years ago, I advocated for my peers to administration. And I had a case where a student and her peers are being treated differently than her male counterparts in the classroom. We brought this up, and we did it in such a way that didn't make administration feel defensive. We created a no-fire intervention that kept an amazing instructor and enforced best practices into the future. We had no other complaints like this in my time at the community college. I'm confident that I'll be able to work with everyone in the legislature because working together is what I've done all my life. I'll have the honor to represent everyone, and you can trust me that I'll do so because I already do.
Thank you. Mr. Javity.
Yes. I was not born a Republican, so I can kind of set that aside for the district. I am a conservative, and I think we all have to kind of start with our values, but that doesn't mean that we have to ignore the conversation that's going on. So I think the best way is to make sure we're having those conversations with each other openly, honestly. We can disagree, but we have to find ways to agree. And the nonsense about whoever's in the majority rules the day and the other party's out of luck is only going to continue to lead us down a road to solutions that make sense for less than 50% of the population. And so we need to knock it off. We got to start having big adult conversations with each other and solving some tough problems, regardless of political party.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, well, now we move into your wrap up, your opportunity to answer questions that weren't asked, to talk about anything that you feel highlights why you're the best person for the job. I'll give you the 1 minute, the 30-second, and the 10-second warning. So let's see, we started with Mr. Lady in the original, correct, when we opened up? Okay,
Yeah, I
so
think
we will start with you, Mr. Javity.
Sure. You know, we live probably in the most beautiful place in the country, if not in Oregon. And I want to keep it that way. You know, we've got to have to fight for our way of life out here on the coast. You know, one of the reasons we moved here was because of those small town values 10 years ago, and we want to keep it that way. You know, there's not a lot of crime. There's definitely not a lot of traffic, except in the summer when people come to visit. And the valley, the city, they want to change that. They want their problems to become our problems, and I don't want to see that happen. So regardless of whether we're Republican or Democrat, we have problems in this district that are unique to us. This is the North Coast. We have fishing, agriculture, we have natural resources like forestry, healthcare, education. We need to be having those discussions. So I think the best way to do this is to make sure we have a representative who is staying in touch with what's going on back in the district. You know, I live here, I've lived here for a long time. I've had kids going to school here. I have a business here. I'm involved in the community. I've lived in Astoria as well. So I feel like I've got a good sense of how we want to keep things, but I also know I don't have all the answers. So that means staying in touch with people who do, whether it's a teacher who knows how to teach best in the classroom, whether it's a doctor who knows what's going on at the hospital, or a farmer who knows how ag overtime is going to crush his business, or a forester that knows how that new habitat conservation plan is going to impact getting those logs out of the forest and food on his table. So I want to ask those guys what their solutions are. I want to take those answers. I want to go back to Salem and sit in those committee meetings and come up with policies that are going to be good, or get rid of those policies that are just not going to be great for us. So be a voice for the people who live here. That's my plan.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Lady.
Thank you, Lisa, and AAUW, the chamber, and the folks covering this event tonight. I also want to extend a sincere thank you to AAUW for the community college scholarships that you've granted the students I represented at Tillamook Bay, really do. Finally, thanks to everyone attending tonight. Having fought for workforce housing, OHP, and quite a few candidates, I know as you do that our vote matters, and I appreciate your attending. I'm Logan Laity, a Neoconi and Tillamook Bay grad, a small business owner and community advocate. I got into coastal politics because of my own struggles finding a home, and I know how working together we can flip the script on housing, education, and the healthcare crisis. I have experience working on each of these issues over the past few years, both locally and in Salem, and I've chosen to run for this office as your state representative because current representation has brought solutions that have been too little too late. You can count on me to take my grassroots advocacy from our community into the state legislature and to work with everyone. For example, during the short session, I worked with the trucker to beef up his testimony for our current representative's bill to fix Highway 6, what we call here as Danger Mountain for a reason. Again, thank you for your time tonight, your interest, and know that I really want to hear from you. If you have an idea or need help with an agency, please get in touch with me. As a precinct committee person, I've done this for my constituents for a long time now, and I look forward to representing you as our next state representative. Have a great night.
Thank you very much for being here this evening and for tackling some really tough questions. Good luck to the two of you. And now we will move on to our county commission race. And let me unmute Commissioner Bell, and then Commissioner, there are two people that are on a phone, so I'm just going to check with them to see if they are your opponent, if it's Graydon Halleck. So let me see here. I want to make sure that everyone has a chance if they. So I'm going to ask 812-3673. I've asked you to unmute. if you are greeted. If not, there's one other person that is on a phone. It simply says iPhone. If you're having trouble, if you could put something in the chat box, or you can also call my cell phone, which all the candidates have a number. I feel like I'm not going to broadcast until 47 of you lovely people, but so hearing nothing, I am going to move into the county commissioner race. And let me unmute you again. Okay, so the process here this evening is 2 minutes for your introduction. Then we'll move into your questions, and then the wrap up, which you'll also have 2 minutes for. So let me get my timer started here, and I will let you introduce yourself, Commissioner Bell.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Mary Faith Bell. I'm a Tillamook County Commissioner. I want to thank AAUW for having this forum. It feels awkward to be doing it on Zoom, but I think we all have a lot of practice with Zoom now, and so it's certainly better than nothing. I regret that my opponent is not here tonight, so you're probably going to get tired of hearing from me by the time I'm done. However, I'll just launch in and say that I've been your commissioner for 3.5 years. I'm running for re-election for position number 3. Prior to that, I was the Director of Communications and Marketing at Adventist Health Tillamook. And prior to that, I was the editor of the Headlight Herald. For the benefit of my friends from AAUW, I'm the first person in my family to graduate from college, and my son is the second person in my family to graduate from college, which I'm pretty proud of. I want to talk a little bit about what it means to be county commissioner, because to be frank with you, before I got the job, I didn't really know. And it's really, you know, I had some idea, but certainly I didn't understand the full breadth of it. It's very complicated. There's a lot to it. It requires relationships. It requires finesse. It requires a great deal of patience, and to be a little bit of an expert on many, many subjects. So there are 3 of us commissioners, and we're each liaison to multiple departments and organizations in the community. I'm liaison to Public Works, which includes the Road Department and Solid Waste. I'm liaison to the Tillamook County Library, to Tillamook County Parks, to the Human Resources Department, to the Clerk's Office, Tax and Assessment, the DA's Office, thank you, Circuit Court, Justice Court, Emergency Management, Dogami, the Futures Council, etc. So I think you get the idea that it's a big job, and I am eager to keep doing it.
Okay, so we will move into the questions. So I'm going to ask you the question about the measure, but in this instance, the question was then brought in to ask your thoughts on all of the measures. So you probably don't need 5 minutes, but at the same time, I think I'll give you 2 to address all of the measures, if that's okay.
Sure.
And for the viewing audience, I'll make sure that I explain what each one of them are as well.
Okay.
So we have are you for or against is the framework of the question. So measure 29-161 is the Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance. We have the 5-year local levy for fire protection in the city of Bay City. We have the Tillamook County 5-year Veterans Services operating local option tax. We have the Tillamook County renewal of local option levy to continue countywide library services. And we have the bond to construct a healthcare education building at TBCC.
Thank you.
All of which I'm sure you're familiar with.
I am. So I'll start in that order. Measure 29-161 is the gun measure. And I'll start by saying that I'm pro Second Amendment and I'm a gun owner. And I think this measure goes too far. This measure would prohibit local law enforcement from enforcing state or federal laws, not only on guns, but also on modifications and ammunition. I think it goes too far. For example, the federal government just recently outlawed ghost guns, which are guns, including semi-automatic weapons that you can buy parts for and put them together. So you don't buy the gun. If you went to buy one of these guns completed, you'd have to register. But if you just buy the parts for it, you don't have to register. There's no registration number on the gun. And so the federal government just passed a law to outlaw ghost guns, is what they're called. And if this measure passes, we wouldn't be able to enforce that law. And likewise, I just think it's too much. It goes too far. So, for example, I'm pretty sure that our forefathers were not thinking about armor-piercing ammunition when they wrote the Second Amendment, and the kind of ammunition that kills police and that kind of thing. We wouldn't be able to enforce if this passes, and I think it'll definitely be challenged in court. The Oregon Attorney General has said so, that they will challenge it, and that's going to be expensive. And so I just think that I think it goes too far. So yeah.
I'm gonna just pause for a moment. So that answer took 2 minutes for the one. Do you feel like you can do the other 4 in a minute, just with your general? Do you feel, does that feel comfortable? Okay. All right.
Okay, sure. Okay, so yes, I support the 5-year operating levy at the library. I think it's essential, it's important. Yes, I support the TVCC bond to build a healthcare education building. I'm on the TVCC board. It's very important. I don't have a personal opinion about the Bay City levy for fire, but I certainly support firefighters, and I know that it's very hard to get volunteer firefighters. And I definitely support the operating levy for the veterans.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there are a lot of parts to that particular puzzle there. So a question that was asked to be asked of every candidate this evening. It is critical that at both the local and state levels, that those that represent us adhere to the highest ethical and legal standards. After all, you will serve us and will be a model for our children. The question has 2 parts. Have you been convicted or otherwise adjudicated for a crime? And have you been subject to official investigation for any ethics violations?
No, I have not been arrested or convicted of any crimes, and nor investigated for any ethics violations.
Okay, thank you. Let me pull up the chat. We had some questions come in directly for you. How can Tillamook regain the senior care options that we lost with Kilchi's house and the Halen Bay house and now the Griffin house?
That is a great question. I wish I had an easy answer. I know that a lot of good people are working on it. I know that there's hope for what the Kilchi's house and Halen Bay house could become. The Kilchi's house, I believe they're both for sale right now, and there's certainly hope that a developer will purchase them who will do the same kind of work with those properties. And in fact, I think that the deeds require it, and so there is no easy answer, but absolutely, it's a terrible loss to our community.
Thank you. Should Tillamook County move to a home rule county with a policy board and a full-time county administrator? If so, why? If no, why not?
That's another good question. I would say no, and the reason is because I'm thinking about county commissioners, work together with other county commissioners through the Association of Oregon Counties. And I'm thinking about commissioners that I know who operate in counties where there's a full-time administrator, and the commissioners work part-time, and they're not as plugged in. For example, the list that I was shared with you at the beginning of my talk, when I was talking about all of the things that I work on and all the things that I'm involved in, part-time commissioners with county administrators have less, they're less deeply involved. And so I've heard from them their frustrations about that system, and it just doesn't seem ideal. I don't think I would be happy with it.
Thank you. Let me get up here. How do you plan to address the affordable housing crisis?
Well, one of my liaison responsibilities is I'm on the board of Northwest Oregon Housing Authority, or NOAA. And NOAA is a tri-county agency that's mission is affordable housing. So affordable housing, generally the definition is subsidized housing or housing, income-based housing, and that's often, not always, but often federally subsidized. So NOAA actually is doing a lot of great work on affordable housing, and there are projects happening all over the Tri-County area now. And there are also some very interesting privately funded projects that are happening now. So I think that work is happening. It's far from caught up to the need, but it really is happening and encouraging.
Okay. I'm going to ask you the question that was on childcare. I have a 1 and a 2-year-old. Next week, I'm quitting my job because my nanny makes more than I do. What are your ideas for short-term immediate changes in the lack of childcare options, in this case, in Tillamook County?
That's another great question. Last year, the Board of County Commissioners empowered Child Care Commission. And so we asked a group of people who are leaders in the community to come together and work on ideas for how to improve childcare. And one of the ideas that came out of the Child Care Commission was to provide training, to fund and provide training, because there are people who want to provide childcare here, but they don't have the business wherewithal. They don't know how to set themselves up as a business, or to go through the licensing requirements, et cetera. So one of the suggestions that I support was to provide more training and assistance to help people get set up to do that business.
Great, thank you. I'm going to ask our viewing audience if there are any final questions. I do have 2 more, but we also have some time, so I could certainly take. Oh, okay, we did get one. Currently, no home in the county has high-speed internet. For the same price as the proposed TBCC building, we could have true high-speed internet at very low cost to every home in the county. Why are goals like this a priority? And will you commit? Why aren't goals like this a priority? And will you commit to moving this forward?
I'm absolutely committed to moving broadband forward. And it's not accurate that no home in the county has high-speed internet. Currently, you can get 400 megabytes per second through Spectrum, and but not everybody has access to Spectrum. And I don't think comparing it to the college is not apples to apples. There is an opportunity for federal dollars now for broadband that's very encouraging, and we're hopeful. We're definitely hopeful. Right now, the federal government is looking at broadband like they looked at electricity 100 years ago. The federal government wants to get broadband to every home, and so they're willing to support it. And We have through Tillamook Lightwave, and which is an organization in the county, we're well positioned to take advantage of that. We have a plan, we have a staff person, we have a board working on it. And so I'm absolutely committed to it. And additionally, I'm committed to the TVCC bond to the healthcare education building, because that's very important also.
Great. Okay. Are there any other questions before I ask the final softball question? Okay. The kind of the wrap-up question here is one that was directed towards the state and the state positions, but it definitely works here at the county level as well. And there's way too much division right now in our society. And if you are elected, how will you work to ensure that all voices are heard and achieve the bipartisan cooperation throughout? So you work with state and federal entities, as well as our local bodies. What strategies will you use to ensure that happens?
Well, I feel like everything I do is about that question. I genuinely care about everyone, period. I work really hard to listen to people, to understand their concerns, to represent everyone in our county, and to bring people together and figure out what do we have in common, and how can we move forward on the things that we have in common. I think we're definitely Purple County. We're 1/3 unaffiliated, 1/3 Republican, 1/3 Democrat. The numbers are clear. And so I just think that everything we do as a government should take that into account, and that we should be working to heal the rifts that are happening in our community currently, and trying to figure out how we can build bridges and work together.
Thank you very much. Well, that appears to, let's see. Are you up for another question? Because we do have some time. Well,
Okay.
All right, let's see here. It just came in on the chat, so I'm just making sure I understand it. Okay, so there are a couple questions in what just came in. So the first is, and this is certainly relevant to Tillamook County, what are your thoughts on the drafted 70-year state forest conservation plan? And then I'll ask the second one that's independent of that.
Well, I think that I haven't read it. I've attended some meetings where the Department of Forestry has talked about it, presented it. I think that that if you believe, which I do, that Tillamook County needs timber revenue, there is reason to be concerned. However, my belief is my approach would be balanced. I really think that we can use our forest as a resource, and we can conserve habitat. We can enjoy it as a place of natural beauty. I love the forest for the forest. I think we can accomplish all of those things, and that's the approach that I would work toward.
Okay. And then another one relevant for the county is, what are your thoughts on the Oceanside transmission line?
Well, I'm hesitating because I don't think I can talk about that. And the reason is because there's the possibility that the decision that the commissioners made will be appealed. And so under advisement of county council, we're not supposed to talk about it.
Thank you for explaining why.
Mhm.
Okay, well, that takes us through our questions. So now you have 2 minutes to address any questions you wish had been asked, or just to talk to us about why you're the best candidate for the position.
Thank you. Well, I'm not going to take the whole 2 minutes because I think we're probably all tired, and I'm tired of listening to myself now. But I just want you to know how much I value the opportunity to be a servant leader. That's why I got into this, because I wanted to have the opportunity to serve, to be of service in my community in a bigger way than I had been before, and to be involved in important things, and to learn. And it's the job is amazing in that way. It's amazing to be able to learn something every day, to be able to talk to all kinds of people and listen to all kinds of people and feel like I'm making a significant and important contribution in my community. And there are things that I'm working on that I'm excited about that I'm not done with, that I want to continue working on. And so I thank you for your support.
Thank you. And if all the candidates who are still here, and it looks like they all stayed with us for this 2 hours, if you all could just come on for a moment, and if everyone would like to just turn on their cameras and just thank them for their time here today. This is not easy to put yourself up in front of people, even if they're just looking at me and 5 other people on the screen right now. This is tough, and so we applaud you for taking the chance and putting yourself out there, and thank you for all your thoughtful answers. So, all right, folks, well, that wraps up our forum for this evening. I would encourage you to reach out to the candidates if you have additional questions. They have all made themselves available to you, and take them up on it. Susan, our president of AAUW, is there anything else that you would like to say?
You said the thank yous, and we just can't thank you enough. This is taking out of your life, your time to run for office, and the thought that you're actually considering and willing to devote to us is an amazing thing. I'd also like to just suggest that you just be sure to vote and pass that on to everyone you know. Just vote. Thank you for coming.
And thanks all of you for staying with us for 2 hours and exercising your civic responsibility to learn about your candidates. So, and again, thank you to our co-hosts, the Tillamook Headlight Herald, everybody's with me, Tillamook Headlight Herald, the Tillamook County Pioneer, and the Pacific City Woods Chamber of Commerce. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.